YouTubers. This is a TPA amplifier board, which I am currently preparing to go in a new speaker I'm making. Probably got enough speakers, to be honest, but I just really enjoy making them. They're a good
project. You've got the electronics, you've got a bit of woodwork, you've also got perhaps a bit of textile
stuff to do the cover, and then you get the enjoyment of listening to them afterwards. So yeah, I quite like it. But here we go. So I've got these very sort of run-of-the-mill TPA3116 amplifier boards. This has got two chips in it. This one does the stereo channel, this one here. So you've got two outputs here for stereo channels, and then you've also got one here operating in bridge mode, they call it. So they're using, I don't know how it works, both sides of the amplifier chip to create roughly double the power output per in one channel. So you've got 100 watt subwoofer output here if you run it at 24 volts, which I intend to do. Now this board here is a pretty cost effective one. It's about £9, and I found that oh, sorry, the subwoofer's this end. That's confusing, isn't it? Anyway, but the subwoofer is this end here. So and I found a while back, while these were still quite popular, you could buy a board with the same chip in it, and the inductors, these I think they're called toroidal inductors, were made with a lot thicker gauge wire, much larger. So probably these are about the size of a 5p piece, and the ones on the heavy duty board were probably the size of a 10p piece with, no, probably like 20p piece with much thicker wire on them. And I've noticed that if you run these very hard, so with a high gain input at high volume, these obviously get very hot because they discolor, and so particularly on the subwoofer. And so I find, and this is the bit which I'm not really into microelectronics, but I figure if there's obviously too much current going through them, then perhaps it's good to add another two of the same type of inductor. So I've stolen these off another board to allow for more current. Now I think these are used to regulate voltage in some way. Again, I'm not really entirely sure what I'm talking about, and that's done by the length of the wire. And so if you've got similar inductors, the same inductors running in parallel, you're still modifying the voltage to the same extent, but you're allowing for more ampage, which if these are overheating, then that's because the gauge of the wire is too small. Anyway, there's also probably a resistance thing going on because the thinner wires provide more resistance, and then that may affect the voltage as well. I don't know, but I would appreciate some feedback. Anyway, I've done this on two other boards, and it does appear to, the board still works perfectly well. And if you're running a large sort of 10-inch subwoofer, which I am, particularly low ohmage one, then it does appear to work. And it might be subjective, but I have noticed that the sound, the bass is cleaner, I think. Anyway, perhaps I'm just making that up. So another thing I do is add in an extra capacitor. So these capacitors in effect store energy. So when the power use within the chip is obviously not constant, it comes in spikes, and so these capacitors store energy very briefly in order to provide a steady supply and account for all those spikes in the energy demand. So if, again, because I'm running a large 2 ohm subwoofer off this of this bridge chip, then again, perhaps subjectively, I've noticed that they seem to run better if you use two capacitors linked in parallel again. So there are some little another thing as well, the clamps on these boards aren't very good. So generally I solder the speaker wires directly onto the back of the board here. So we're not using those clamps, which are pretty poor quality and probably not great to use. The rest is fairly self-explanatory. I just use I've got quite a powerful 24, it's an 8 amp power brick, which I'm using to run 2 of these, so they've got about 4 amps each, which should be plenty. And you've got 3.5mm jack input here, which I intend to use. You can solder the inputs directly onto there, but it's very tight going because those pins are very close together, but you can do that. And then that will then go into the box, which I'll do in another video. But really, that was just to show. This video is just to show some of the sort of ad hoc upgrades I've made. And if you are into electronics, and you can perhaps point out why that is a rubbish idea, or maybe explain why it works if you agree with what I'm saying, then I will be interested to hear, because like I say, I don't really understand electronics overly well, and particularly, I mean, that is a fairly low intelligence kind of solution. I kind of get that, but these things here, the inductors, I'd be interested to hear someone's opinion on those who knows what they're talking about. Yeah, so thanks very much. Hope you found that useful in some way. If I get any comments saying it's a terrible idea, then I'll make sure I pin those at the top of the comments section so you can see how wrong I've got it. Anyway, thanks very much for having a look, and happy tinkering. Try not to burn your house down. Cheerio, bye.